ahead.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So my name is Jennifer Ransall Smith, and I am extremely excited about chatting with everyone tonight. And my intention is to share strategies that are tangible that you can take away, and it is to shift the way that you're looking at how you're currently showing up in your personal brand right now. So I'm going to start by sharing a quick story. And it is about a gentleman who worked in the home and building industry for many years and had built a really solid reputation and had gotten to the point where he was ready to leave the Midwest and head down south with his family and just spend a little bit more time on the beach and relaxing and enjoying life. And so he went to his boss and he said, I wanted to let you know that the house that I built, that's going to be the last house because I'm about to leave. And his boss was very taken aback. He didn't anticipate that happening, and he knew how much they had coming up on the pike. And so he said, tell you what, you hang in there and you build one more house with me, and I'll gladly let you go. So this gentleman, who we'll call Kevin, was, that wasn't what he anticipated, and so he begrudgingly accepted the offer. And he did everything that he could to hurry up and get the house done. He ramshacked through deadlines. He used inferior materials, everything that he could do to get to that end goal of leaving town. And when it was finally time for his boss to do a final walkthrough for approval and sign off, as they were walking to the house, his boss started smiling. And his boss had the keys to the house, and he handed the keys to Kevin and said, this is my gift to you. And I want to thank you for all the years that you spent building and working with me. And as you can imagine, the only thing that Kevin was thinking is, if only I had known that was my house, I would have done it also differently. And so when I think about personal branding, when we think about your reputation, what happens with most people is we leave it to chance. We are not intentional about our path, our career path, how we're positioned in the marketplace. We're not really sure on, does everyone who encounters me have the same, here are the 3 or 4 things that I stand for, and so you have an encounter with Jennifer and you walk away and this is how you feel. We usually, what happens, even with most Americans, most people in general, is if you catch us on a good day, then you think we're a rock star, and if you catch us on a bad day, then you have a different feeling. And so what we want to do today is start shifting that and recognizing the power of being intentional about how we're showing up. So next slide, how do I, okay. So
I'll do it. Just holler when you're ready. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
So when it comes to your career, nobody's going to step aside so you can step up. If you're ready to increase your visibility, your credibility, your influence and impact, you simply have to make a decision. And I am a firm believer that you want to become the chief marketing officer of the brand called you. You want to learn how to strategically become the brand ambassador of who you are and what you stand for. And it doesn't matter what you do, but especially like everyone on this phone, where you're in the people business, where everything that you do lies on the reputation of who you are, the way that you get more business, the way that you get opportunities based on how people are perceiving you and how you've done before. Okay. Next. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, and I'm going to share some important, the importance of personal branding. I know that everyone here has heard the name or heard the term so much that it just starts to become white noise. Everyone does personal branding now, and personal branding this, personal branding that. You're just like probably yada, yada. Okay, if I hear that one more time. But I'm going to make a case that I believe on why it's so essential. And then I'm going to give you some tangible strategies, and then we're going to give you some things to remember, and we'll share a couple case studies that are out there, people in your industry right now who are really doing it, and maybe shift the way and give you some insight and ideas on how you can implement that in your own. Okay. So I own a company that was officially 9 years old last month. It's called Brand ID Strategic Partners. I work with clients across the country in every field imaginable. I've had clients from NASA who are NASA, nuclear engineers. I have a doctor from Harvard University. I was the keynote last week 2 weeks ago at Microsoft Women's Conference. This is the second year. In October, I was invited to do a workshop with the Obama administration, their White House appointees, because they were making the transition, looking for new jobs as the administration was coming to their end of their term. And so really giving people the tools to understand that your career and that opportunities, I'm not going to say that they don't ever fall in your lap, but you have a much bigger lap and you have a much more robust opportunity for that to happen when you are strategic. And so working with clients, I work with organizations, I work with teams, but my entire DNA is wired to recognize and to show people that you have to be in the driver's seat when it comes to steering your career. And there is no reason that someone is like completely annihilating the game in your industry and someone else is struggling. And the difference between that usually is the one person made a decision. Okay. So before we get down to the nitty-gritty, because we're going to go hard for 45 minutes, if you want to connect with me, I'm everywhere online. You can find me on Twitter. You can find my website. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can just put in Jennifer Ransall Smith and pull me up, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So if after this conversation you want to reach out, you want to connect, you want a resource, whatever, you just want to say hi, you did such a great job, that's what I'm anticipating you're going to think, then you can reach out to me. So next slide. We're going to talk a few minutes about your reputation, why it's so essential, what it is, how people are perceiving you, and what you can do about it if there is a gap between how you're showing up and how you want to show up. Okay. So what is personal branding? It is your reputation. It is the mental real estate held in the minds of others. It is a way that you can be identified by your strengths. It is the return on investment that people get when they're doing business with you. And you're so consistent with it that every time they're interacting with you, they are like, oh, my God, we need to work with this person. We need to hire this person. This person needs to be. It's the reason that some people have opportunities to sit on boards and paid $100,000, $200,000, $50,000. I have a client who just started working with me last month, and she literally, her game plan is, she's on a major board now, is to sit on a couple boards. That's her game plan. She has built a lucrative, career with, a strong body of work in a particular niche, and that's what she wants to do. But when we talk about building your brand, we're talking about what other people are saying about you when you're not in the room. We're talking about the fact if I pulled 4 or 5 people in your inner circle and someone from the office and someone from your church or your synagogue or wherever you go to worship, and we're talking about someone at your children's school, and I asked every single person, tell me 2 or 3 things about them. Would every person say something consistent or kind of in alignment, or is it all over the place? Is it that you're showing up a different way no matter where it is you go, or you're like a transformer and you're transforming who you are and your reputation based on who's in front of you instead of being absolutely consistent and being in alignment with what you value and who you are? Let's think about Four Seasons, or let's think about the W Hotel. So you walk into a hotel, doesn't matter who you are, your experience, what that person who makes $5 million is going to experience. Let's say that they're not getting the presidential suite because that's different. But what that person who works in the door gets $5 million, the person who is, a janitor who makes 23, they're going to have the W or the Four Seasons experience. It's consistent. It isn't that it changes. You don't go to Starbucks and they say, oh, Mary's coming in, so we're going to give her this experience, and someone else is coming in. This is our organization. This is who we are. This is what we value. Doesn't matter what your name is. It's going to be written on the side of the, of the cup. This is how you're going to interact with us. And so that's what we want to do when it comes to your personal brand. Okay. So what are the benefits? Why am I sitting here? Why are you on this call? Why are we talking about you in the concierge industry building your brand? Well, the first thing is you absolutely, when you're clear about it, you start attracting the right kind of opportunities. You have a much higher opportunity to increase your earning potential because you're building it based on names. There are people within your industry who you know that organizations or hotels or places would love to have them. People travel across the world to stay in their facility or to work with them or to hire them to, book trips or whatever it is based on the reputation of how this person is done. It creates top-of-mind status. It positions you and puts you in the leadership role, and it absolutely adds to your credibility within your industry, and that's why it's so essential. We want you to be visible. Okay. So what's it not going to do? Personal branding does not work if it's a lie. It's not about you saying a couple cool things and putting a couple cool adjectives out there and saying this is who I am, if that's not who you are. Because the moment that you're inconsistent, what starts to happen is you let the world know. It's like you go to a restaurant or you go see a movie and you're just in love with this movie or you're in love with this restaurant and you're talking about all the attributes and you come home and you call your friends and you're like, you have to try this. And I sat at the chef's table and we had, 5 or 6 course meal and it was fantastic. And then you go and your friend is like, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. I'm doing something for my husband tomorrow or next week and let me get a table. And they go and their experience is horrific. And they're looking at you like side-eyed, like why would you recommend that? So the same thing when it comes to you. It's not you getting out there and you're saying how great. It's you getting really clear about how great you are and what it is that you do and what it is that separates you, and then you're consistently doing it. So it's not going to work if it's a lie. It does not work. You don't build brands overnight. All the great brands in the world have not. They've been around for years. And even the brands that are new that are, establishing and really, set and in alignment, it does take time to start penetrating in the mindset of others so that they are able to view you a certain way. So it's one thing when, let's use, Apple came out with the iPhone in the mid-2000s. I guess that was mid-2000s. And everyone had a fantastic experience. We didn't even know we wanted an iPhone. We didn't even know that we needed a computer in our pocket. So everybody runs out. People start getting it. The word starts spreading. Look how fantastic this is. That could have been like a one-off. They could have done one thing, never done anything consistently again. And so they're just like you have one-hit wonders. You had a great experience with that, but it's not. Now they have just product after product, consistently upgrading after upgrading, that in a short period of time, we're talking like a decade here, a little bit more, a little bit less, built a brand that you've come to recognize, and you've come to recognize it in a certain way. You absolutely associate it with innovation. You absolutely associate it with them anticipating what your needs are before you even thought you needed them. And then you're getting addicted, We never knew we needed an iPod until they introduced it, We were so fine with having this big old cassette player walking around down the street in the 80s. So it's not going to work if it's a lie. Next. Let me ask you if this is your reality. Do people frequently request you by name? Do you have a niche or particular area of expertise? Have you mastered your position to the point that you know it like the back of your hand? Does your circle of influence allow you to provide a higher level of service? When people are looking for the best of the best in your industry, are you considered in the top 3? Have you been able to leverage your expertise for additional streams of income or opportunities? And does your compensation reflect your level of expertise? Okay. The good news is we're all muted. So even if you shouted where you fall after I just read that on a scale from 1 to 10 and you're just a 2, nobody knows. And the even better news is, next, the better news is that you're in complete control. And so what I want to let you know is, doesn't matter how great you are if nobody knows who you are. You don't want to be your industry's best kept secret. You don't want to hide any longer. What you want to do is make sure that you're positioning yourself to be a leader in your industry. Okay. And you want to be really clear about what people are saying about you. Okay. And if people are not talking about you, that's a problem. You know, people say, I've been hearing this a lot lately. Any news, even if it's bad, is good news. I totally don't believe that. However, I do believe that you don't want to spend your career, and it doesn't matter in what industry, what you do, whatever. You don't want to dedicate your life, let's say that better, to doing something, to learning it like the back of your hand, to working really hard and not getting recognized at the highest level of your potential. Everyone's potential is completely different. Everyone's capacity for risk is completely different. So you're going to have some people who are able to put it all on the line and just deliver at a level that just leaves you awe-inspired. You know, you have lots of people in the industry. You have lots of people, let's just look at a Beyonce or something. She can get up and do a concert almost every night and go at a level that there are millions of other people who sing couldn't even imagine working for a week, no sleep. That's just not how they're wired. But at whatever level of potential that you have, you want to make sure that you're tapping to it at the highest level and you're delivering at the level that exceeds exactly what you're capable of doing. Okay. So now I want you to do the flip side. I want you to imagine what it's like if you're showing up at your highest level and you are positioned in a way that you're killing the game, you understand it, and life is as it should, career is as it should be. Becoming the undisputed expert in your particular area. You know it. You're dramatically increasing your income based on your reputation. You're able to go in and command what you want because people are walking into your establishment, they're walking into your organization, your companies or whatever, and they're requesting you by name. And you've delivered so consistently, people are willing to pay it, and organizations are willing to pay higher to have you within the organization, being sought after as an industry expert and frequently quoted in national publications and about the latest trends within the concierge industry, and client requesting you, or news, or just what's going on. When you want to know what's going on in this industry, this is who you're calling. Being invited to keynote at conferences and sit on high-profile panels and discuss, high-level performance. Elevating your income based on your reputation and no longer being your industry's best-kept secret. Okay. The good news is you can. The good news is you are absolutely in control. You're the chief marketing officer, the brand called you. And before we get down and break down what that really means, I wanted to ask you, if you look back at your career, if you look back at the last 12 months, and you look at how strategic you have been when it comes to guiding your career, when it comes to strategically positioning yourself, when it comes to being clear about who you are and what you bring and what your differentiators are, and all of that stuff. You look at all of that. And you were interviewing someone for the role of chief marketing officer of your personal brand. And they were talking about what they could do for your career to take it to the next level. And you looked at what you did for your career in the past 12 months. Would you even hire yourself? What I want you to recognize is when we talk about stepping into the role, it does not have to be a zero-sum game when we talk about that. It doesn't have to be, oh, my God, I have children, I have a husband, I have, employers, I have clients, I have people, I don't even have a capacity to add something else. What I want you to recognize is, especially nowadays, because of technology and because people have access to so much of the world, we don't really have a choice. So it could be as simple as every single Sunday night from, let's just say you have a family or whatever, from 8 to 10 o'clock is my time and it's my personal development time. I'm going to work on my personal brand. I'm going to do certain things to make sure that I'm completely advancing myself. But I am on the calendar of my own self. And I always say that you can tell a person's priorities by what's on their calendar. And most of the time, we're not on our own calendar. Okay. So let's talk about a niche and carving out what you do in such a way that you're able to step ahead, step up on a more visible platform. So how can you differentiate yourself from other people in your industry? If I were to get your resume, if I were to get, your background, and you there are 4 or 5 other people on the team or other people in the city, if they have a very similar background, what is it about you that stands out from everyone else? Like, why would I hire you? Why would I promote you? Why are people requesting you? What is the typical background of people bring in your industry, and how could you leverage being different? When you look at yourself and say, I am atypical, and how can you use that to your advantages? What weaknesses do you possess that can become strengths? When people hear that, it's interesting. When we every single person in the world knows who Oprah is. Maybe 3 people don't, but everyone else does. 99% of the people. And I listened to a podcast on NPR. It was called Making Oprah. On I think it was on iTunes, or The Making of Oprah, or something like that. Really interesting. And you're listening to that, and they interviewed Bill Donahue and all of her producers, and how they built this icon. And one of the ways that they were able to do it is by embracing things that other people weren't doing. So when people hear weaknesses, all of a sudden you're like, oh, my God, how could that be an asset? But the truth of the matter is the reason that she was able to establish such a strong brand is because she really embraced that whole vulnerability thing. A lot of people, you guys might have heard of Brene Brown and Daring Greatly. That's the name of her book, but How to Be Vulnerable. I mean, Oprah was the first person to come on and say, look, I was pregnant at 14, and I lost the child, and it gave me a second chance. And, oh, my God, I remember what it's like dating a guy and him ignoring me and running outside in my house gown and hanging onto the bumper when he was about to break up with me. Or, oh, I've tried this drug. And, so all of a sudden it was disarming to other people. And so when it comes to looking at yourself, it's not about being perfect. It's about being authentic. I was just speaking in Tucson, Arizona, and this was in January. And I was teaching at the University of Arizona with CEOs and chambers of commerce from around the country. It was called the Winter Institute for the Chamber of Commerce. And so you had CEOs from Alaska and all the states and down here and everything like that. And one of the things that I shared when we talk about being vulnerable, but it was just in passing, was that what I had gone through. I have a son who has ADD. And as we were getting him diagnosed, I recognized that I, too, had it, probably where he got it. Didn't know, I'm 47, that I had it. And so what I did and how I got on medicine and how it really, really, literally changed the game for me, because there were certain things or certain ways that I was wired where I'm just like boom, 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 just intense. And just casually sharing that. And that evening, there was a big celebration on this resort, and there was a bonfire in the evening, and this particular class of CEOs were graduating, and they asked me to come spend some time, take pictures, and hang out with them. And one of the guys, who was the CEO somewhere in the Midwest, pulled me aside and said, can I ask you something privately? And he said, it's really interesting that the moment you said that you had ADD, I pulled out my computer and I started Googling and realized that I probably have it too. And I would have never thought about that, and I just wanted to give you a hug and thank you, because I think that's going to be game-changing for me. And so when you're in an industry like you are and you're connecting with people, people like to connect with people, and they like the authenticity. And it's not about being perfect. It's about being real. And so we want to talk about your weaknesses. We want to talk about you. How can you be the local expert? Whatever your area is, how could you know every single restaurant in here and who the best chefs are and what this is, and be able to go around and meet and be able to recommend because of your relationships and because what you know. Maybe you're the expert on really fun, out-of-the-way experiences. whatever. How can you start taking it up a notch and embracing it in such a way that you don't have competition because nobody can compete with your level of your in-depth level of knowledge? And then what are your others in your industry not paying attention to? You know, you are on the front line. And so how many times have you experienced something or gone through something and said, wow, not only could I do it better, but it should be done. Here's a gap. So start paying attention to those gaps when we talk about your niche. Okay. What I firmly believe is your number one client is you. And so I think that my challenge to you, even more so, not even think, my challenge to every single person on this call is we should start acting like it. Acting like you are running your brand. Okay. So we're going to talk about quickly 3 steps for you to become an effective chief marketing officer. We're going to, I'm going to provide you with some, strategies, a couple of recommendations, and then we're going to open it up for questions, and then you guys are going to go out there and kill the industry. So let's go, Pat. We're going to be fierce, focused, and ready to dominate. I love this picture, and when we ever hear about focusing, I heard a story one time about how you have the lions and you have gazelles, and everybody loves the picture of the lion, and everybody thinks of themselves like a lion, but then their everyday activities match that of a gazelle. And so when we talk about building a brand, it is absolutely stepping into the role of what can I do to be in complete charge, as opposed to a gazelle where I'm completely responding to how people, how my bosses, how situations are treating me. How can I hop over in the driver's seat, own a particular area of my niche, become so good at it that I cannot be ignored? Okay. Yep, step 1. Next.
Want me to keep going?
1 back.
Right there.
So I heard a story a few years ago by Jack Canfield. And Jack Canfield, he is the author, for those who are not familiar, of Chicken Soup for the Soul, which went on to, behind the Bible, be one of the biggest, selling books of all time in history. And he was telling us on this particular call that every Friday he comes home and he asks his wife on a scale from 1 to 10 to rate him as a husband. And he said, if I'm not a 10, what I want you to do is I want you to tell me what I need to do to become a 10. Because if I don't know and I come home and I step into the Lazy Boy and I grab a beer and I turn on ESPN and you simply needed 10 or 15 minutes to tell me about your day or run over an idea or whatever, I'm going to repeat that behavior over and over and over again. Not only there's going to be a wedge, but then there's going to be this whole miscommunication of me not knowing what that blind spot is. And he talked about how so many of us are reticent when it comes to actively seeking feedback. We will absolutely do everything that we can in our lives not to get feedback, because we look at it and we get offended, especially when the feedback is coming from those who are closest to us. Family, spouse, boss, whatever, all of a sudden you're offended because we have this thing that's wired in us, like we're supposed to come out the womb and just dominate in everything that we do. We're just supposed to know it, like, you start the job, you're supposed to know the industry, and when someone says, here's how you can do it better. But on the flip side, think about the organization that you work for, and think about your weekly team meetings, and think about when you get reviews or they're like, this is what my experience at the hotel was, this is what my experience with your company or your organization was at the firm or the law firm or wherever you are. No one is sitting in that meeting and getting the negative feedback and getting offended. It is, this is not working, how do we fix it? And so when we think about branding for yourselves, it's the same thing. It's not about being offended. Sure, there's some things that you might not just straight up agree with. That might not be, but there's so often you cannot take it to the next level if you're not being fluid when it comes to getting feedback. Best way to do that is a personal brand audit. Best way to do that is to get very clear on how other people see you, because there's so often we see ourselves one way, and there's a huge gap between how we see ourselves and how other people see us. So what is your current reputation within your organization? What value do you bring to other people? If I were to pull 4 or 5 people in your circle of influence and say, name 3 things that this person does unapologetically, that they do completely well, would every person give me those 3 things? Or at least in alignment, if it wasn't the same language, or is it all over the place? On a scale from 1 to 10, how intentional have you been when it comes to managing your reputation? Do you have an identifiable personal brand? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is your wow factor? What is that one thing that you do so unapologetically dope that nobody could even compete with you? Do it with your eyes closed. Is your image in alignment with someone who's at the top of their game, or in alignment with somebody who's hoping and praying that they get a promotion one day? Like, when you walk into a room, do people feel like, wow? And it's not about having a Givenchy or Christian or Louboutins or anything like that. But there is an air of people who are at the top of their game. There is a commanding force that you can embody that shows that you are the person to know. How do others see you when it comes to your colleagues, your bosses, your senior executives, or people in your industry if they're looking for the latest trends, trusting and turning to you as a trusted resource? We want to get really clear, because wherever you are, that is your baseline. And then everything else is just up from there. You look at, here's where I am, and I've done nothing intentionally. So imagine with just a tweak. I was speaking yesterday. Right now, I just spoke this afternoon. I'm down in Florida. I live outside of D.C. I'm at the University of Florida, and I was here at the Women's Entrepreneur Conference. And I had a room full of 600 people, and I asked this question today, and I asked it yesterday, and I was speaking right across the street from the White House to the National Association of CPAs. 60 women, all the time. Here's my question yesterday. I asked people, all executive women CPAs, how many of you has a blueprint, a game plan of where you are, where you're trying to go? How many people spend time working on your personal brand? How many people are clear about what it is that separates you in the entire room? Just a list of 4 or 5 questions, not deep or anything, no throwing anything for a loop, just straight out questions about managing your brand. Yesterday in the room was all the executives. Today it was a lot of students, but there were, I would say, 70% students, but then there are local businesses that sponsored. Vera Bradley, co-founder, Barbara Bradley was one of the speakers. So you had a lot of businesses as well. So yesterday, the entire room, 2 people raised their hand. Today, having this question, every single person, the majority, the same thing. Very few hands are going up. And the good news is most people are not doing it. So that translates to your industry. So you think about the fact that most people are not strategically guiding their career. Most people are not saying, okay, I'm about to own this particular niche. So you don't even have to do 100 things to start putting yourself in a position of greatness when it comes to doing that, because most people aren't doing it. All of a sudden, you really become known for every single Friday. I'm going out and getting customized note cards. And when I have interactions with clients or whatever, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing that. And if someone mentions the book, I'm going to drop them a book. I was sitting in the hotel today. When I came off the stage, several people, a lot of people, gathered, so we had the conversation. And it was a women's conference, but there were some gentlemen there who were part of the University of Florida, their entrepreneurial school. And the guys asked me, could they take me to lunch? And they said, the best burger place in Gainesville is right here. We want to go hang out with you. One of the women who happened to be in Gainesville, she's not a student, tagged along, had a great conversation. I shared strategies. Everything was fantastic. And we came back, and just in passing, I gave them suggestions on books. Just wonderful students. But this woman was not a student yet. She's a student, but she's in pharmacy. She had taken off a year. And they brought me back to my hotel, came up to the hotel, and I was fighting a slight headache, and I got a text. I gave all three of them my phone number, told them if they need anything, and I got a text from the woman, and she said, I noticed you said that you loved books, and so I have a surprise for you. I'm going to stop by the hotel. And she brought me 2 books. I had both books, but she said, but you don't have a signed copy of this book. And she handed me the book. And I was just not only appreciative, but I was like, wow. So she already stood out. And I said, yeah, I'm going to go back out tonight. I have a webinar in a little while. I have a fighting a headache, and I've taken some Tylenol. She said, next time take Excedrin because it's gone in 30 minutes. I gave her a hug. She had brought her daughter back, her 7-year-old daughter. She picked her up as she dropped the book. And I gave her a hug. I went to my room, and I'm not joking. I sat down on the bed, and the phone rang, and it was the front desk. And they said, we have a bottle of Excedrin for you. And I was like, you do? And she said, yes, someone just dropped it off. She brought me an entire bottle. 2 minutes later, I don't know if it happened to be there, but that small bottle of Excedrin, like I have a large community on Facebook. Immediately, I just rolled over and posted it to my community and talked about. But she totally stands out with the book that she got signed and this bottle. And I'm not even saying that. I'm saying that it doesn't. I sent her like every emoji. It does not take a lot to stand out and wow someone because most people don't take the time to wow someone. Okay, next. SurveyMonkey is a fantastic place to start. It's free. So is Google. Ask people. Ask them. If you were to recommend my services to someone in my industry or someone who needed me, what would you say? How would you recommend me? How would you describe me at a dinner party if I were coming up? What would you say my undisputable strengths are? You know, what value do I bring to the industry? What do you see as my blind spots? If you look at me and I'm trying to take my career to the next year at a level, and I've dedicated an entire year to really getting focused on and getting out there and making a name for myself, what are some things that I don't see? How am I missing, is my image in alignment with someone who's at the top of their industry? What 3 words would you describe as my personal brand? I was speaking at Microsoft recently. Well, this is not this time. The first time I spoke at Microsoft, and a woman walked up to me, and she, gave me a hug and said, everything that you've said has, really dramatically changed my life, and I wish I had heard you 3 years ago because I would have made different decisions. And she said, I am the only woman on a big team, and I don't feel like my thoughts are being, heard. I don't feel like I'm being validated, and all this stuff. Everything was negative, 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 negative. And I'm really, fighting this. And she told me what she did. And I was blown away because what she did at Microsoft was huge. Like, if I told you her title, you would be like, oh, my God. However, when she told me what she did, I had to do a double take because there was nothing about her that exuded that she was a power player like that. Her presence, her disposition, what she had on, and I'm not even talking about casual because there were other women who were in that room that I never talked to who were, when we were at Microsoft. There were women who had jeans on because it was a conference, and maybe a cardigan or maybe, just casual. But they stood up and you knew in the back of your mind, you were like, I bet you that's a major player around here. And then someone would say, oh, did you see so-and-so? That's head of, they're head of the Eastern region, so you knew it. But there was nothing in her. So sometimes the blind spot, we see it all the time. I have clients who come to me and they have everything checked off on their resume. But their image, the way that they show up, the way that they present is not where it's supposed to be. Instead of wrapping it up, go hire a stylist, Hire someone and say, this is how I'm comfortable. How would you take this to the next level? What kind of signature, what do I need to make me feel, even on a casual day when I walk in, that I am who I am? I am someone that people turn to when they're looking at how to get, information, how to get resources, how to get, access to things that they did not have. Okay, next. So your competitors. Who are the leading concierge services in your industry? Who are the leading concierge players in your industry? Who is speaking at your conferences? Who are writing columns in your publications? When you're reading these columns, because I hope you have the publications, I hope you have stuff, when you're looking about relationships, when you're doing all this stuff, where are the gaps? What are people not talking about that you could insert yourself? When you look at, who are the top industry or who are the top concierges in your city, have you ever Googled? Who are the top concierges in Chicago, Illinois, Omaha, Nebraska? Who comes up on the first 2 pages? Who comes up on the first page? Where are you when we look at that? Who other than you are people turning to for resources? And then what 3 things have you done in your industry in the last 12 months to elevate your mastery in your particular area? What have you been doing? Is it a class? Is it certification? Is it immersing yourself in a whole? They have great courses online. They have everything is on YouTube. Is it, let me buy every single book by every high-level concierge service or butler service or this or the School of England? What can you do? What have you done to say, not only am I serious about what I do, but I'm about to do it at the next level? Okay. And so resources. I'm a huge proponent for the Kolbe Report because it shows you what your how you're naturally wired, and it shows you how to leverage those strengths. But there's Strength Finder. There's How the World Sees You, which is fantastic, by Sally Hogshead. She has a book called How the World Sees You, and she's a leading expert on that. And I love that because sometimes we see ourselves much differently. Quick story, because I know we're running on quick time, but years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was at a dinner party with a client who hired me consistently, and he had my husband and I, and his mom was in town. And we were sitting down, having dinner, and he said, "Mom, Jennifer is the one I was telling you about. She's an amazing motivational speaker." Now, this person had hired me several times for marketing, but I was immediately taken aback because I'm not a motivational speaker. I am a strategist. Now, I might motivate in the process, and then I've since, gotten tons of opportunities, but that wasn't how I wanted to be positioned because there's a difference when you're looking at their end of I'm bringing someone in to motivate or I'm bringing someone in to work with our team to help us get to the next level. And so that was very key for me because I recognized if that's how I am coming across and how I'm being perceived, then what kind of things can I start putting in place to change the trajectory of how people are receiving me so that you recognize that I am a strategist and they have the opportunity, I have the capabilities of working with people at every single level to get them to the next level. Okay, next. So, quick thing, important thing, your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development. If you're not spending time personally and professionally developing yourself, then you are literally capping yourself off at the knee. It's the truth. It's undisputed facts show it, and you need to be making sure that that is built into your everyday, whether you're in the car and you're listening to Podcast University, whatever it is, make sure that's an integral part of the way you're going. Okay, next. Number 2, next, we're going to talk about positioning. When you talk about building a brand, what do you want to be known for? Get really clear. I should have one sentence. I want to be known for I want to be a leading expert when it comes to helping people create experiences they've never experienced before. I want to be known as the person who is the most connected person in my particular city. And if you're coming in here and you want to be able to do X, I can show you or introduce you to people who can help you do it. Be really clear and focused. What 3 words would you use to describe who you are? And are they clear enough that they can be said very clear and succinctly? Next. Let's talk about developing thought leadership in your niche. Start using your community for research. Start asking questions. Think about how you can right now start creating content, how you can right now start writing articles or blogs or doing social media commentary, how you can start sharing and providing tips and tools and resources for people who are coming in your area of expertise so that you're catapulting your visibility out there. How are you leveraging LinkedIn? Even though everyone here is in the relationship business, you want to start creating things that allow you to start using your voice to position in a much bigger way. What new books or what things are out there? it is surprising to me how many people don't get their industry publications, how many people are not keeping current on what's going on if their employer is not paying for it. It's not your employer's job to do that. You're the CEO of your brand. You're in charge of your branding, your marketing, your PR. You should know who the leading players are across the country. You should know who the writers are who cover your particular area of expertise. You should keep your finger on the pulse at all times of everything that you're doing. Okay, next. Your toolkit. Okay, next. I just think that there are certain things that everyone needs to have when you're very serious about your career. I think that your player, you need to have a professional executive headshot. That's low-hanging fruit. When I'm coming on, I should see a seamless digital footprint. I should see you looking like your next level. You are projecting that. You should have a well-written bio that speaks to your level of expertise and who you do and what you work for, that kind of thing. And I do believe not everyone wants to be a public speaker. Totally get that. But for those of you that are looking for opportunities to share the strategies of what you're doing in your industry, or share the importance of your industry, or share the importance of understanding and having those relationships, starting to get out there and build a signature talk and build things that start to elevate your positioning in your industry, okay? Association, publications, conferences, awards. When we talk about strategic game plan, what are the things that you're consistently doing? How are you integrating yourself into your community, into the concierge community, the concierge association? How are you using that as voice? Because what it starts to do is when you start masterminding and when you start connecting with other people within your industry, it just opens up the world of possibilities that you didn't even know existed, and things that you didn't, that you would have never considered. And I have a ton of examples, but limited time, but it's absolutely the truth. Okay, next. As I was preparing to talk to you guys, I came across Steve Sims and just was like riveted by him. And he's, they say, over the pond. But he has Bluefish Concierge. But what was so interesting about him is he used to be in construction work, and now he's doing these amazing adventures for people. He actually was doing a wedding at the Vatican that was coming up. But he was doing so many fantastic things, and he talked about, when we go back to authenticity, the importance of just being who he was. He said, I got to a point where I felt like I needed to drive up in a certain car, I needed to get out with a suit and do all this. And he said, when you're showing up inauthentic, people can sense that. They don't necessarily know, but they know something is a little off. And then he said, when I got back to who I am, I'm the guy in the Harley, I'm the guy who has tattoos, I'm the guy with lots of ear piercings, and I come up and they're shocked that I'm the one who delivered this, this event or whatever. He has a podcast. He's speaking all over the country now. And that's what I talk about when I talk about being able to leverage. We used to be in a box. It used to be you're a concierge, you're a writer, you're a librarian. And then now all of a sudden what starts to happen is, because of technology, social media, opportunities just start manifesting. And so you look at a Susie Orman. Tons of people do financial services. But Susie Orman not only saw a need, but she was like, let me do books, let me do classes, let me do this. Then she's like, I'm telling everybody that they need to have all their important documents, and they don't have anywhere to put it, so let me do safes. Let me sell those safes on QVC. It is anticipating and looking at and knowing your audience. Okay, next. And so Shalina Smith, I came across her, and she's a baby concierge. And like I said, I'm really big on that whole niche marketing, because there are a ton of people who do exactly what all of us do. And so you want to figure out how to take yourself out of the mark, even if it's general, but having an in-depth knowledge in some particular area. And so she is someone who's not only translated that, but taken it to a heavy media. So you can find her on Entertainment Tonight. You can find her on this show and in publications. And just let me show you things that you didn't even know that you needed, and how a person with my services can help. Okay. Next. So what I want to ask you is what you're waiting for. Now is the time. It's time for you to step up, to own how fierce you are, and to make a decision that you're going to build the brand that you always knew was possible. Okay. Couple things to remember. You are your biggest asset, and investing in yourself is the best 401k that you're ever going to have. And it's the truth. We talked about that with Jim Rohn, your personal development. You're in the position right now to create more of an expert status. You can make sure that your activities and what you're doing are completely in alignment every single day as you're building that, as you're building your personal strength. And I want you just to get really clear. Just get really clear about what your strengths are, what it is that you do well, and then get laser focused and going on to do that. Okay. I think we're getting towards the end. Quickly, one way to find out about how you're viewed, like we said, just reiterating, is to ask. Start a WOW file. That's a tongue twister. WOW file. And that is when you have good contact, when great things happen to you, when people are appreciative, when just people are like, you're a rock star, tear it off, put it up, keep it in a file folder, keep it somewhere so that you see it all the time and you can pull it out to remind yourself. So when you're in the day-to-day, a lot of times it's easy to forget how ridiculously amazing you are. And then set up Google alerts and get really clear and start keeping your finger on the pulse of the industry and what the trends are and what companies that people are hiring and what people are just doing insanely great things so that you could start implementing some of those things. Okay. Next. So if you want to stay in touch with me, here's my contact information. Like I said, I'm across media platforms, and I want to thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear me? Here are some resources that we can share, and because this is being recorded, I'm sure that everybody's going to have access, so you don't have to have wickedly fast fingers. But the classic is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the fact of the matter is there are some books out there. Keith Ferrazzi's Never Eat Alone. It's fantastic on relationship building, executive presence. And then I found a couple podcasts that are specifically for your industry and plug them in. The service industry podcast seemed like it was amazingly cool. And Barcode, about bars and how people are hiring and that kind of thing. And when you start expanding your knowledge base and just general information on certain things within your industry, it starts to open up, like I said, things that you were not even thinking about before. So I think that is probably it.
I'm going to unmute everybody, so hang on.
The conference has been unmuted.
Okay, go ahead, anybody.
Hi, Jennifer. This is Andrea. How are you?
Hey, lady. How are you?
Good, good, good. I couldn't miss your thing, and I learned something different since this is my second time hearing you, so I learned something different. Getting started to create your own personal business. What would be the first step? I know you have to create your brand, but after you create your brand, how do you get started to create your own business in the world of everyone doing event planning, so to speak?
Okay. So I would go back to my original thing, my question of what the ROI is, what the value. Be able to distinctly say what it is that I'm doing that is not already in the marketplace, what I do better than anyone else. It's a difference when you're not only coming from the concierge industry, you have been really directly affiliated at a lot of levels and highly involved. So by the fact that you're doing something, you're going into another service industry, you're absolutely telling your story. One of the reasons that I want to do this is because I recognize being on the other end that we're frequently bringing people in and that we're hiring people for my organization, that a lot of organizations were missing the ball or they weren't servicing their clients a certain way. And so I recognized that I was seeing certain needs and there was a way for me to fill those gaps in that weren't being anticipated, and that's why I'm launching. You know what I'm saying? So how can you say 1, 2, or 3 things that I want everyone to know that I can deliver, how I do it differently, and the benefit of working with me, that when you walk away, you will have this experience. And then you're in that line and you're creating from that place.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, I guess you covered it so well that they got it.
Oh, perfect.
All
I hope
right.
that's it. Or unless they're just like, what in the heck?
Oh, I have one other question. When you found these other Steve Sims and Shalina Smith, you just did a Google search, or how did you drill down to get to them?
So I googled most popular. I mean, not most popular, but best concierge in Washington D.C. Best concierge, here. Concierge magazines. I mean, like literally, and Steve started popping up everywhere. I mean, he's on everybody's podcast. He had this. And so it's like a, what is it called? It's like a follow the leader kind of thing,
Okay.
There is not a lot of people with high visibility. So it allows you to have even more opportunities, It's not like everybody's out there killing it. And so he's over there, you're over here. Who's in your area? If I work for the Washington Post and I'm looking at what are the leading trends that are going on in the Washington, D.C. area and corporate America when it comes to, servicing, professionals, why am I not calling you? So
right.
How do you start positioning yourself and saying, here is my area, here is my niche, and I'm introducing myself, I'm sharing value, I'm sharing strategies, so that I can't help but be one of the top 2 or 3 people that are coming up in this particular area.
Perfect.
Okay.
Great.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jennifer. We appreciate your time
Thank
and
you.
efforts. Thank you.